Hello everybody, it's just me out in the woods with Tucker here. Hey buddy, say hi. Whoop, easy. Easy. Happy boy. Yeah, I know. Oh my god, it's so exciting. Whoop, whoop, off. So yes, we're doing a re-upload today just because I'm currently working on my ranking series for October. Those of you on my channel know that in October I like to do a ranking of some of my favorite horror movies. So this year I'm counting down my 31 favorite 90s horror movies. But anyway, I've been focusing on that for a little while, so I didn't have time to do an actual proper video for you guys this week. So this is a re-upload from my old channel. In a way, it's a horror talk before I actually started doing horror talks. But anyway, I hope you enjoy this blast from my past when I was even more awkward than I am now, and hopefully next week I'll have some time to post a better video. If not, be prepared for October, where you'll be getting a video a day for the entire month of October. So until then, here's Tucker. Easy, buddy. Tucker, sit. Good boy. Easy, easy, hey. Off. He's a very, very excited boy. Well, anyway, enjoy the video. Hello all out there in YouTube. You'll notice I'm not in my typical location. I'm at another house watching a very lovely dog. Yeah, that's right, I'm talking about you. You'll have to forgive me. It's been a very, very busy week. I didn't really have time to make a proper video, but I still wanted to get something out to you guys. So you'll have to forgive me. This is going to be less polished than my other videos, a little rougher. You'll probably hear a rumbling sound. That's because I have the air conditioner on because it's very hot here, and I want to keep myself and the dog comfortable. So I came up with this idea for a video. A few months ago I did this video, Horror Movies for New Horror Fans. And in that one I talked about 10 movies that I would recommend to people just getting into the horror genre. All of us horror fans, we all have our movies that we recommend to people when they come to us asking about, you know, horror movies. If they're new to the horror genre, they ask us what they should check out. I thought it would be fun to do a similar video to that, but with Italian horror movies. I'm a big Italian horror fan. I absolutely love Italian horror movies. And so I decided to come up with 10 movies that I would recommend to people just getting into Italian horror. A few things to get out of the way first. Just like with that other video, this is not a top 10 list. I'm not ranking these movies in any way, they're not in any particular order. This is just 10 movies that I personally would recommend to people just getting into Italian horror movies. Also, this list could easily be filled with movies from Lucio Fulci, Dario Argento, and Mario Bava. Any one of their films could take up at least half this list. And I wanted to get a little variety in here, so to give myself a little more of a challenge, I made this rule over one film per director. Just so we can get a better mix here, not just the same, you know, directors throughout this whole list. Even though I love Fulci, Argento, and Bava. So, also, in my last video, Horror Movies for New Horror Fans, I talked about Lucio Fulci's Zombie and Sergio Martino's Torso. Those are great movies, and I would recommend them to anybody getting into Italian horror, but I decided not to include them in this video because I already talked about them. If you want to hear me talk about those movies, just check out that other video, Horror Movies for New Horror Fans. And with that note, let's get started. So, for my first movie that I would recommend to someone getting into Italian horror, I had to start off with a film by Lucio Fulci. Lucio Fulci is not only one of my favorite horror directors, he's one of my favorite directors in general. Because his movies look really, really good. They are exploitation films, but they're really good-looking exploitation films. The camera work in his the camera work in his movies is so good. The atmosphere is great. The way he incorporates music. Now, Lucio Fulci has been known as the Italian master of gore. He has done some fantastic gory movies. Zombie, as I mentioned, and his Gates of Hell series. Those are probably his most well-known movies. The Gates of Hell series, it consists of City of the Living Dead, The Beyond, and House by the Cemetery. Now, even though that's a trilogy, it doesn't matter what order you watch those movies in. There's not one continuous story throughout all three of those movies. They're just tied together by a similar theme. And what I love about the Gates of Hell movies, especially in The Beyond, is the story doesn't really matter. Fulci isn't really trying to tell you a story, even though there is a story in these movies. But what he's more so trying to do is get you to experience a nightmare. Those movies are very dreamlike. A lot of his movies are dreamlike. He's trying to capture the atmosphere of a nightmare. But people just getting into the genre can be a little thrown off by that when it comes to Fulci's movies, especially the Gates of Hell movies. Even though he's very good at gore and he's made some fantastic gore movies, he's also very good at just making suspenseful movies. Suspenseful atmospheric films. When the giallo genre exploded, thanks to Mario Bava and Dario Argento, Fulci tried his hand at making some giallo movies. He made Don't Torture a Duckling, Lizard in a Woman's Skin, The Psychic, which finally has gotten a Blu-ray release, a very underrated movie. And later on in the 80s he did New York Ripper, which is a lot gorier than those other three giallo movies. The movie that I would recommend to someone just getting into Italian horror is The Black Cat. Now hear me out here. I could have easily gone with The Beyond, or City of the Living Dead. But The Black Cat really stands out to me, and it's a very, very underrated Fulci film. The idea is ridiculous. You have this guy who can communicate to the dead, and he has a lot of grudges with different people. So he wants to get revenge on a bunch of people, so he has the spirits of the dead possess his cat, so that his cat can go kill people. You hear that idea and you expect something very, very silly. But watching this movie, it's actually a creepy atmospheric horror movie about a killer kitty cat. I know, it sounds weird, but he manages to take that silly idea and really make it work. The black cat that they have here, it's a very beautiful looking cat, but they are able to make it seem menacing. And, yeah, okay, you know, if a cat's pissed off at you, it can really fuck you up. You know, I've been scratched by a cat before, and I probably deserved it, but it's... when you see a kitty, the first thing you think is not, holy crap, this thing's going to kill me. But they manage to make it actually really threatening. You would not want to come across this cat in a dark alley. The movie is a gothic horror movie, and we don't get too many of those nowadays. We didn't really get too many of them in the 80s. There were gothic horror movies in the 80s, but when you think 80s horror, the things that stick out to you the most are Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Return of the Living Dead, something along those lines. And there's a little more of a campiness to 80s horror, which I do love, but there weren't too many 80s gothic horror movies. It's in color, but if you were to watch it in black and white, it would feel like a Universal horror movie. just bloodier. A bloodier Universal horror movie. So it's a perfect combination of good kills, good suspense, good atmosphere, with a killer kitty. And that's the Fulci movie I decided to stick with. Of course, after you see The Black Cat, by all means, go on to The Beyond and City of the Living Dead and stuff like that. They're great movies. So, for the second movie that I would recommend, I had to go with an Argento movie. I mean, yes, Fulci is my favorite, but Argento is Argento. He's probably the most notorious Italian horror director. And I could have easily gone with Suspiria into this spot. I almost did. The reason I decided not to do that is because Suspiria is the most notorious Italian horror movie. And for me, recommending Suspiria to someone getting into Italian horror is like recommending Nightmare on Elm Street to someone just getting into horror. People getting into horror already know about Nightmare on Elm Street. And if they haven't already seen it, they're going to see it whether I recommend it or not. It's the same thing with people getting into Italian horror movies. They've either already seen Suspiria, or they're going to see Suspiria whether I recommend it or not. So I don't need to recommend Suspiria. That's why I didn't put it on this list. I don't really have a need to recommend it, because you're going to watch it anyway, if you're getting into Italian horror. I have to get a Giallo movie on this list, and there are a few Giallo movies on this list, because when it comes to Italian horror, the Giallo genre is probably the biggest genre in Italian horror. And Argento can make a good Giallo. And the one I decided to go with was Tenebrae. The reason I would recommend that to someone just getting into Italian horror is because it is very close to an American slasher movie. It does feel like a slasher film, but one of those whodunit slasher films. You know, those ones kind of like Sleepaway Camp. It's not as low budget. I do love Sleepaway Camp, but Tenebrae is not as low budget as Sleepaway Camp. But I mean, like, you never really see the killer. I should say it's more like Black Christmas. You don't see the killer, really. You only see his hands or something like that. The killer is never really on screen. It's mostly just their hands that are on screen. Like Black Christmas. It has some very memorable scenes in it. These images, these kills that really stick out. In Italian horror movies, when there is a kill, it's not just the kill itself that stands out, it's the body afterwards. Especially with Dario Argento, he knows how to film a body so that the corpse itself is just as scary as when the person is being killed. It's like the scene where this woman gets her throat slashed and then she falls backwards, smashing through glass. It sticks with you. The woman's a corpse. But that image of just that corpse laying back with her hair slicked back really stands out. I would not say that Tenebrae is my favorite Argento Giallo. I actually do think that Bird with the Crystal Plumage and Deep Red are better, but I do think Tenebrae is a good movie for someone just getting into Italian horror. Tenebrae is still great. I just like Bird with the Crystal Plumage and Deep Red even better. And for the third spot, we might as well get Bava out of the way as well. Mario Bava is the Alfred Hitchcock of Italy. His movies, when you see one of his movies, you can tell they have that vibe of classic. You watch his movies and that's what you can think, that's all you can think as you're watching it, just, wow, this is classic. And it was so hard to pick a Bava movie, just one. It was hard to pick one Bava movie. It was hard to pick one Argento or Fulci movie. But especially with Bava, because Mario Bava was so influential to Italian horror. You look at Blood and Black Lace, which is my favorite Bava movie. It's so hard not to recommend that one. I did a review on that, and you should check that out because I go on about this same thing. I think Blood and Black Lace is as influential to the slasher genre as Psycho. Psycho is very important. Psycho is very important to slashers and modern horror. But in terms of the slasher genre, I think Blood and Black Lace is just as important. And I almost went with Bay of Blood as well. But I decided not to because I thought if I'm going to recommend a movie from Bava, I think it should be a 1960s horror movie. And Bay of Blood came out in the 70s, like very early, like 1970 or 1971. I can't remember off the top of my head. But the 60s was when Bava shined. You know, it was like, you had the 60s, which was Bava's decade, you had the 70s, which was Argento's decade, and then you had the 80s, which was Fulci's decade. And the one I decided to go with was Black Sunday. There's a lot of black in Bava's movies. It's either black or blood. That's what it is in Bava's movies. Black Sabbath, Black Sunday, Blood and Black Lace, Bay of Blood. there's a lot of either blacks or bloods in Bava's movies. Anyway, the reason I decided to go with Black Sunday is because, again, it's a gothic horror movie, and it's black and white, and and this really is the one that has that feeling of classic. The opening sequence alone in Black Sunday is one of the most memorable scenes in horror. Like, you have this woman who's going to be burned as a witch, and before they burn her as a witch, they're gonna lodge this mask filled with nails onto her face. You don't see a lot of blood, but they still show that thing getting lodged on its face. It's not that gory, but you can feel the violence. You know? And the thing about Bava is that he was a former set designer. So when he made movies, he really liked to show off his sets. And the movies where that is seen the most is Blood and Black Lace and Black Sunday. These are the movies where the set design is very important, just as important as the actors on screen. When you think of the classic black and white horror movies, especially the black and white horror movies from the 60s, you always have Psycho and Night of the Living Dead. Both classics. But Black Sunday should really be up there with them. But yeah, Black Sunday, if you're getting into Italian horror, Black Sunday, that's a great movie to start with. Blood and Black Lace is great too, but I would say that start with Black Sunday. In the number 4 spot, we're going to go with, this is a movie that a lot of people have heard of, but it is a very good movie to start with when getting into Italian horror, and that's Demons. And the premise is, I love the premise of this movie. You have people going to see a movie in a theater, and while they're in the theater, people start getting possessed by demons, and then they all start killing each other. Simple premise, yes, but I love that aspect. There are not enough horror movies that take place in a movie theater, because I love that aspect. You're watching a movie, and the characters in the movie are watching the movie, and there's a horror movie going on in the cinema. You have horror movies where there are scenes where people are watching the movie, like in The Blob, but it doesn't take place for the whole movie. This is the one where the whole movie takes place in a movie theater. The gore effects in Demons are really good, especially the throat-ripping scene, and I love the simplicity of the demons. I mean, it's a lot like how they did it in The Exorcist. In The Exorcist, when Linda Blair got possessed by Pazuzu or the devil or whatever the hell you want to call it, her face became deformed, but in a subtle way. You know, like, yeah, this is still a person, but they're still possessed by a demon. It's the same in demons. Like, when people are possessed by demons, their eyes change and their teeth grow sharp. It's really freaky, because when their teeth grow sharp in there, it's like their teeth fall out and are replaced by fangs. It's so awesome. And it has a very punk rock feel to it. You know, it's like, you think that this movie, when you're watching this movie, you think that you should be watching it in the middle of a mosh pit. That's the punk rock vibe that this movie gives you. I won't say too much else about Demons, because a lot of people have heard of Demons, and a lot of people have probably already seen Demons, but I do think that it deserves some love, and I think that, you know, if you're getting into Italian horror, Demons is a good way to go. The next, in my number 5 spot, we're going with another Giallo movie. And this is one I don't hear talked about that much. I haven't really heard it talked about at all. It's called The Red Queen Kills 7 Times. Now, you'll have to forgive me because it's been a little while since I've seen this movie, so I don't remember the character names too well. But it's an interesting concept. This family is said to be cursed by this spirit known as the Red Queen. And you have these 2 sisters whose their father dies, and it's said that he was killed by the Red Queen, or the Red Queen, like, he died because of the Red Queen. One of the sisters ends up dying, and then the older sister, when she's all grown up, she starts seeing images of this woman in red. And of course you have these murders that are going on as they're happening, and she doesn't know if it's the Red Queen, if it's her sister coming back from the dead taking the image of the Red Queen. So it's a mystery, and you don't know if it's supernatural or not. They do a good job at blurring the lines between whether it's supernatural or not supernatural. I just remember watching this movie and watching some of the kills, because the kills aren't that extravagant, but they're fucking brutal. You just have this woman, she has a knife, and she goes up to these people, and it's not like a creative kill like a Freddy Krueger or a Jason Voorhees, but it's brutal. She goes up to these people and she just starts stabbing them over and over and over again. And all you can say is, Jesus, as she's doing this. Because, again, it's just like, not trying to be flashy, not trying to be dignified, nothing like that. Just, you can feel that this person wants, whoever this woman is, you know that she wants this person dead. Just because of the amount of times that she's stabbing them. Oh my god, I watched those wide-eyed and like, okay, you know, I love a good Freddy Krueger kill, but that, holy shit. I like when a movie does that. As much as I love a good flashy slasher kill, I love when a movie just has a killer who just wails on a person. It's like, I'm not trying to be clever, I'm not trying to be flashy, I'm not trying to be creative, I just want you dead. Because it leaves an impact. It just gives you that feeling like... and that's with an is a real word. Look it up in the dictionary. Okay, it's not. I'm just goofing off at this point. But yeah, The Red Queen Kills 7 Times. A very underrated Giallo movie. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it. And I would check it out. I really would check it out. If you want a good atmospheric Giallo movie that feels like an American slasher, not entirely like an American slasher, just a little like an American slasher, but it does have that slasher vibe to it. I think you'll get a kill out of The Red Queen Kills 7 Times. Yeah, I know, very professional. I'm drinking water as I'm doing my video. Oh god, it's been a long week. Anyway. So, now we're at our number 6 spot. We're kind of flying through these here. In the number 6 spot, I wanted to pick a cannibal movie. It's hard to recommend a cannibal film to someone just getting into the Italian horror movies. Because cannibal films can be a little more intense than most other horror movies. You know, like Cannibal Holocaust, Cannibal Ferox, Mountain of the Cannibal God, they're all, I mean, they're good movies, but like I said, they can be a little more intense, and if you're not ready for that, if you don't know what you're getting into when watching a cannibal film, you can be turned off by it. I would recommend checking out something like Cannibal Holocaust or Cannibal Ferox a little later down the line, but you should watch some other Italian horror movies before you get into those ones. But I felt I had to include a cannibal film because Italian cannibal films are a big part of Italian horror. But I found a way around this. I found a cannibal film that I think anybody can enjoy. And that's because it's a little more like a zombie film. It's called Cannibal Apocalypse, also known as Invasion of the Flesh Eaters. It stars John Saxon, so any Nightmare on Elm Street fans, hey, Johnny Saxon's in this movie. He is a Vietnam veteran, and in Vietnam he rescued 2 of his friends from being prisoners. They were held prisoner in this camp, and while his friends were being held prisoner, they went nuts and became cannibals. This movie takes place after that, after the Vietnam War. We're in a city now, and that's what separates this from other cannibal films. Most cannibal films take place in the jungle. This one takes place in a city. I can't remember off the top of my head if it's New York or not. We'll say New York for now, but don't hold me to that. It could be like Los Angeles or something like that. Off the top of my head, I can't remember if it's New York or some other city, but we'll say New York for now. John Saxon and his 2 buddies have been rehabilitated after all this time. But his 2 buddies have been cursed with like a cannibalism virus. They can still think for themselves, they still have all their facilities intact, but they still suffer from cannibalism. And if they bite somebody and don't kill them, that person becomes a ravenous cannibal as well. So it's a little like 28 Days Later, only it's just like cannibalism treated as a virus, and it spreads throughout this city. And I like it because it is a good twist on the cannibal genre. We're not in the jungle. We're not dealing with jungle natives and jungle cannibals. We're in civilization. We're in suburbia. And in suburbia, people are turning into crazy cannibals. John Saxon is great in any movie he's in. I mean, my only problems with Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and Nightmare on Elm Street 3 is that there's not a lot of John Saxon. There should have been more John Saxon in those movies. I mean, Nancy is a great character in Nightmare on Elm Street. I love her to death. But I wanted more John Saxon. I'm sorry, I'm a John Saxon fan. But anyway. But the main thing he's trying to do is he's trying to stop his friends from spreading cannibalism through the city. You know, so it's a good cannibal film for people just getting into cannibal films, because it's a twist on the genre, and it is more of a zombie movie, yes, but it's a zombie movie where the 2 people who spread the infection are not dead. They can still talk, they can still think, it's just that their minds have been overcome by their cannibalistic urges, and then that's what starts off this this plague of cannibalism. So for our number 7 spot, I wanted to pick something by Umberto Lenzi, who is also a hard one to recommend for new Italian horror fans, because he's done mostly cannibal films. He's done Cannibal Ferox, Eaten Alive, and he also did the movie that started off the whole genre, Man from Deep River. They're all good movies, but again, I don't think that cannibal films are the best movies for people just getting into Italian horror. So I wanted to pick something from Umberto Lenzi and for this list, and I was racking my brains out for the longest time, and then I remembered Nightmare City. And Nightmare City I would highly recommend to people getting into Italian horror, especially people who like 28 Days Later and the Dawn of the Dead remake. Everybody always talks about 28 Days Later, and I love 28 Days Later. It's one of my favorite zombie movies. But people always give credit to 28 Days Later for creating the fast zombies. Those zombies that run after you, you know, not the ones that shamble after you, like, these are the ones that book it after you and rip you apart limb from limb. And yeah, okay, you could make the argument that the zombies in 28 Days Later are infected people, not zombies, but I think we can all agree that zombie is the perfect word to describe them. You know, a virus that turns you into that basically turns you into your most animal instincts. I think we can call that a zombie. And like I said, 28 Days Later is usually the one that is given the credit for the movie that created fast zombies, when that's not entirely true. Before 28 Days Later, we had Return of the Living Dead. And before Return of the Living Dead, we had Nightmare City. Nightmare City has the fast zombies. Not only are they fast zombies, but they're zombies that use tools. So if one of them has a machete, they're gonna run at you, hack you to pieces, and then eat you. And that's the main reason why I decided to go with Nightmare City. Because it's a fast-paced zombie film. The characters don't get a lot of downtime once all hell starts breaking loose. But the main reason I'm recommending Nightmare City is because I want people to see the true origin of fast zombies. So if you're a fan of fast zombies, you should check out Nightmare City. So the next one I wanted to go with, this movie isn't really good, but it's so entertaining, and that's why I wanted to recommend it. I wanted to recommend something that was more on the entertaining side of things. You could call this a so bad it's good movie. It's by Bruno Mattei, or Mattei, however you want to pronounce that, and it's this movie called Rats, also known as Rats Night of Terror. What's great about Rats is it's a killer rat movie, but it's also a post-apocalyptic movie. It takes place after, you know, as usual, after a nuclear bomb. It has a very Mad Max feel to it. People have left the surface and have gone underground, and they're living underground. Every now and again you have people who come above ground just to explore. And you have this group of, I guess they're teenagers, but, you know, they're much older than teenagers are supposed to be. It's the movie equivalent of teenagers. You know, like, they're supposed to be teenagers, but they look like they're in their 30s. But, this group of people, they come above ground to explore. And while they're exploring, they get trapped in this laboratory that has been overrun with intelligent rats. The only reason these rats are intelligent is because they start killing them. They look like regular rats, they just have glowing red eyes. And this movie is so much fun. It's that 80s apocalypse, you know, that post-apocalyptic 80s style, where everybody looks like they just jumped out of a music video. That's what I love about it. All the characters look like they came right out of a music video. Over-the-top acting, and they're all trying to get away from these intelligent rats. These rats get inside people and make them explode. That's so ridiculous, I know. It's a post-apocalyptic movie that doesn't really need to be a post-apocalyptic movie because the focus is on these killer rats. And as ridiculous as that is, it's fun. It's so much fun. I mean, you have a scene where a woman gets killed because a rat crawls up her vagina. You don't really see it do that, but later on the people are checking on her, like, oh my god, she's dead, and then the rat comes out of her mouth. And it's a very cheap-looking effect, so you can't help but laugh at it. You have... Oh my god, this line is so funny. And this is not PC, so if you're offended by it, oh well, because it's just meant to be funny. You have this character named Chocolate. Her name is Chocolate. She's the black character. And you're going, oh god, this movie would not fly today. But one of the funniest moments in this scene is they're going through all this stuff that they never saw below ground, like all these goods, and one of the goods is flour. I guess they don't have flour underground. And they take the bag of flour and they dump it all over the character of Chocolate. And she starts laughing, and she says, I'm white as all of you! Absolutely ridiculous. Oh my god, I know that line would not fly today, but it's funny. It is funny. And it's not being done in like a mean way, it's just like these people, they've hung out together for a long time and they have no problem making fun of each other. You know, it's just... it's so ridiculous. And it has one of the craziest endings. Well, not like crazy, but it's just goofy. One of the goofiest endings I've seen in an apocalyptic movie. I won't spoil it here, but it's one of those endings where when it happens, you just burst out laughing. It has a mixture of real rats, and you feel kind of bad because the rats weren't treated too well when making this movie, but you also have scenes with fake rats, like I said, when that rat crawls out of that woman's mouth and it's obviously a rubber rat. It's a good movie to watch with friends. You know, get a bunch of friends together, get some beer, some pizza, and just have a fun time making fun of this movie. I highly recommend it because it's just so damn entertaining. And that brings us to our number 9 spot. Now, I was debating on putting this one on the list because it is a giallo movie. But it's a giallo movie that focuses more on the mystery angle than the horror angle. And I thought really long and hard about this, about including this on this list. I was debating, can this be considered horror? And in the end, I just decided to put it on the list. If you don't agree that it's horror, that's fine, but I still think it's a good movie to check out. And it's called The Blood-Stained Butterfly. Now, the reason I recommend this one is even though there aren't a ton of kills in it, there are some. And again, this is a giallo that focuses more on the mystery angle of things. Like, Tenebrae and the Red Queen kills 7 times, they have that mystery angle to them, but it's definitely more of a horror movie. Whereas this one's more on the mystery side of things. You have this murder, this young woman is murdered, she's found dead in the park, and it has all these different scenes of the investigation, you know, the people testing, the investigators testing fingerprints, they find the suspect, they have a courtroom, they go to court and they go to trial with it, and it does feel like a courtroom drama for a good portion of the film, but it's a courtroom drama that's done very well. You can't help but think if the TV show Law and Order was inspired by this movie. You know, because watching it, I mean, like, you have these, like, Law and Order, CSI, all this stuff. when you watch this movie, when you watch Bloodstained Butterfly, it feels like one of those episodes. Just a little longer and sleazier. Like if one of those episodes was rated R. During these court scenes and during the investigation scenes, you watch them and you think, wow, I mean, this is kind of like CSI, or this is kind of like Law and Order. But if you like Law and Order and you like those procedural ones, this is an interesting one to check out. I think it's a better court drama than Law and Order because it does feel like an actual movie. And you have all these different side stories going on, people who are affected by this murder. You have the family of the man who's been accused of this crime. You have, people who were, involved with the woman who was killed. And it has one of the most unsettling sex scenes that I've seen in a movie in a while. Let me clarify. One of the most unsettling sex scenes that involves consensual sex. Because, I've seen movies where rape is involved, and those scenes are very disturbing because it's somebody forcing themselves on another human being, and that is a very hard thing to watch. But you have a scene in this movie where this guy, I can't remember the names, I'm sorry, but this guy, he's very disturbed. He's a very disturbed individual. He's having sex with his girlfriend. And while it's happening, there's obviously something off about him while he's having sex with her. And she can tell too. The sex is consensual. Like, they were both, hey, we're gonna have a good time, and you can tell that as it was starting, they're getting into it and they're enjoying each other. But then she notices that as he's doing it, he's getting a little more intense. And there's just something off about him while he's doing it. And she kind of starts crying while they're having sex. And she, is obviously being uncomfortable by this, but she doesn't want to stop because they've been going at it for a while. And she doesn't want to, she doesn't want to stop it. She wants them to finish. But she's starting to cry and she's starting to get, uncomfortable, like something's not right here. And, it's like at any moment you don't know if this guy's going to start strangling her while they're doing this. It's one of the most intense sex scenes I've ever seen. And that's why I decided to put this movie on the list. Because that scene stood out to me so much. Plus, the idea that it might have influenced, Law and Order and stuff like that, because I know a lot of people like Law and Order, and I know a lot of people like CSI, and this is something that could have inspired that, Anyway, moving on from that. So finally, we're at our last movie. I decided to again go for a movie that is more of a so bad it's good movie. Because the movie's not good, but it's fucking amazing. And it has one of the craziest plots in any movie. It's called Wild Beasts. It's an 80s horror movie. And, here we go. So, PCP has gotten into the water supply of a zoo. And then the zoo animals drink the PCP-infested water, go nuts, escape, and start attacking the city. Yeah, this movie is not good, but it's so damn entertaining. That's why I put it on here. Now, before I continue, I do have to say that this movie does have animal cruelty in it. That would be something it's not the main focus of the movie, but there are two scenes with obvious animal cruelty. There's a scene that involves rats, and another scene involving the zoo animals like the lions and the hyenas getting loose in a slaughterhouse with like cattle and pigs and stuff like that. Now, it's a similar thing with Cannibal Holocaust, where people are bothered by the animal cruelty. And I completely understand why, and I do agree that the animal cruelty should not have happened. I do not condone the animal cruelty in these movies, and unfortunately there are Italian horror movies that do have animal cruelty in it. But people ask me why... They ask me, how can you still watch these movies with animal cruelty? And my response is, yes, I think it's wrong, and I am never going to condone the animal cruelty in these movies. But the reason I still am able to watch these movies despite the animal cruelty is I can't really do anything about it now. It happened. And yes, I don't agree that it happened, but they came out years ago. They came out before I was born. There's nothing I can do about it now. You know, I can't go back in time and prevent the animal cruelty from happening. If I could, I would not be here. You know, there's a lot of things in history that we wish we could go back and change, but we can't. All we can do is accept that it happened, acknowledge that it was wrong, and learn from it so we can make sure that it never happens again. That's my response to people who ask me about why I still watch these movies even though there's animal cruelty. So getting that out of the way, back to the fun part of this movie. The fact that it's zoo animals hocked up on PCP running rampage through the city. Oh my god, the idea is so crazy. I mean, just the concept that you have lions running around eating people, elephants running through the streets causing chaos. There's a scene where one of the elephants pulls this woman out of a car and steps on her head. There's a scene where the elephants get into an airport and all hell breaks loose. It's so goddamn ridiculous. And one of my favorite scenes, and yeah, I'm kind of spoiling this movie a little bit, but don't worry about spoilers, watch it anyway. Because if anything, the spoilers will just make you want to watch this movie even more. You have the main characters, they're trying to capture these animals and get them back into the zoo. And there's this one scene where you have a cheetah. You have this woman in a convertible, and she's trying to drive away from this cheetah that's chasing after her down the street. And you have the main characters, they have tranquilizer darts, and they're trying to find these animals. And all of a sudden this woman, like, speeds past them. And as she's speeding past them, then the cheetah's following behind her. And you have one of my favorite lines in the movie. "She's not crazy, she's being chased by a cheetah!" It's one of those movies that it's so ridiculous you can't help but smile as you're watching it. And they try to catch the cheetah, so they're chasing after this cheetah that's chasing after this woman in a convertible. And she can't escape this cheetah. She's driving away from this cheetah in a car, and the cheetah is still keeping chase with her. And as they're doing this, these guys are, you know, trying to hit the cheetah with a tranquilizer dart, and the people are doing more damage than the cheetah is. All these frickin' car accidents are happening all around these people as they're trying to catch the cheetah. You can't blame the cheetah for any of it. It's like the people do more damage than the animals do. But the animals still do some damage, and you get some fun, you know, PCP animal scenes. Lions hocked up on PCP. That's all I really need to say. And my favorite thing about one of my favorite things about this movie is the ending. I'm not going to spoil the ending, because I can't spoil the ending. This movie doesn't really have an ending. The ending of this movie literally feels like the director just said, okay, you know what, enough's enough. That's like, that's enough, let's just stop. That's what it feels like. Oh my god, this movie is so much fun. It's so ridiculous, it's so crazy. Wild beasts. get a copy of it and watch it, particularly with a group of friends, if you just want to have a good time. You can't always recommend the classics to people when you want to get them into a genre. Sometimes you have to recommend the movies that aren't good, but are a lot of fun. That's just how it is. I mean, yeah, Wild Beasts, not a good movie, but so entertaining. I love it so goddamn much because it's so crazy. And I can't help but recommend it to anybody. I just say the plot. Zoo animals hocked up on PCP. And instantly they say, yeah, I want to see that movie. And I hope you feel the same way after I've recommended it to you. So yeah, those are 10 Italian horror movies that I recommend to people just getting into Italian horror. I do apologize for this video being kind of rambly. Like I said, it's been a very long week. I'm actually kind of out of it right now. I haven't gotten a lot of sleep this week, and I've been walking a lot of dogs in very hot sun. But still, I wanted to get a video out to you guys, and I had a lot of fun doing this. So now I want to ask you, what are some Italian horror movies that you recommend to people just getting into Italian horror? And while you're at it, give me your favorite genre and movies you would recommend to people that are just getting into that genre. Make it a little fun here. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll try to get back to the better quality videos next week. But on that note, this is your buddy Justin, here to remind you that the Grindhouse will never die.